Today we shall delve into the Death Watch, the ultimate shield of the Imperium against the Xenos threat. Let's start with the basics. What is the Death Watch? This is a chapter of the Adeptus Astartes dedicated to safeguarding the Imperium from Xenos. Unlike other Astartes chapters, it is distinguished by its ranks comprising Space Marines from various chapters. Serving in the Death Watch is, incidentally, a great honour. Essentially, the chapter serves as a mini-army of the Ordo Xenos, a division of the Inquisition tasked with overseeing and eliminating Xenos, alien civilizations that threaten humanity. Tyranids, Orks, Tau, Elders, Drukhari, Necrons, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are also various Hrud, Yokero, the foul soldiers of the Death Guard, and others. These threats must be addressed, and the Ordo Xenos has organized its own elite chapter, the Death Watch, specifically for this purpose. The Ordo Malleus has the Grey Knights, the Ordo Hereticus has the Sisters of Battle, and Xenos are dealt with by the Death Watch. The Death Watch comprises veterans from different chapters. Being selected for the Death Watch is a great honour for any Space Marine, and believe me, only the most elite are chosen. From them, so-called kill team are formed to deal with various Xenos threats. It might seem that's all there is to say, giving a comprehensive answer. But no. To truly understand what the Death Watch is, we must look to the past. The Death Watch appeared around the 32nd millennium, when a massive war of Orks, led by a war boss, arrived in Imperial space. This was certainly not the best time for the Imperium. The Orks were poised to conquer Terra, and something had to be done about it. A newly elected Lord Commander of the Imperium and the sole surviving member of the Imperial Fists, named Kurland, came up with an excellent idea to create kill teams of Astartes specialists who would eliminate Ork war bosses and attack where they were least expected. As the saying goes, desperate times call for desperate measures. The Inquisition, as well as the High Lords of Terror, approved such tactics and assembled the new elite chapter from survivors of various chapters after the Ork invasion. It was after the war with the Orks that the Inquisition split into two components, the Ordo Malleus and the Ordo Xenos, with the Death Watch becoming an integral part of the latter. There's also a theory that the Death Watch was founded many years ago during the Apocryphal conclave of Orphite IV, where Inquisitors gathered to address the Xenos threats that had been terrorizing humanity for generations. Most Inquisitors at the Council belonged to the Ordo Xenos, and each claimed that the ultimate threat to humanity would indeed come from the Xenos. The conclave lasted many years, and every participant had their own opinion. Some believed that all alien life in the galaxy should be annihilated, while others proposed alliances with the Eldar. Discussions also touched on the subjects of godlike entities capable of seizing the galaxy, and it was assumed that the threat might come from other galaxies, which eventually did happen. Overall, there were many disputes, and the Puritan Inquisitors did not prevail in them. The most experienced participants decided to create a new chapter, the Death Watch, which would have almost no restrictions. To reinforce their decision, they invited masters from different Space Marines chapters and showed them a vision of the future where humanity either perishes at the hands of Xenos or lives in slavery. The masters listened to the arguments and discussed them the following day. Most of the chapter masters agreed to join the Ordo Xenos and provide their best warriors for service. Those who were not present at the first oath took it later. Since then, the chapters consider it an honour to send their fighters to the Death Watch. Some are simply thrilled with such appointments, like the Crimson Fists or the Mantis Warriors, and the Imperial Fists are no exception. To join the Death Watch, a Space Marine needs to prove himself a true hero, defeating a Carnifex or a war boss, possibly an entire group of enemies, while maintaining the purity of heart and clarity of mind. This is because a battle with Carnifex can damage the psyche of even the strongest warrior. Why did they decide to call it the Death Watch? because it stands on guard for the life of all Imperium's inhabitants, and has waged war with other civilizations for many millennia, employing the most unusual methods while cooperating with the Ordo Xenos. The chapter's inquisitors track down the enemy and direct Deathwatch kill teams. Since the Apocryphal Conclave, being invited to join the Deathwatch is considered a great honor for Space Marines, as this chapter invites only the best of the best. This confirms their outstanding mastery. Therefore, the Deathwatch often comprises only veterans. The Deathwatch does not recruit novices from any planet, and why should they when there are so many heroes around? It is only important that these heroes are professionals in combating Xenos, which in general can be found in any chapter. Such individuals are usually monitored by the company captains. If one of the Battle Brothers proves himself in Xenos annihilation, he may be recommended for the Deathwatch. This is managed by Captain, Apothecary and Chaplain, and if they all agree to send the Battle Brother to the Deathwatch, the Chapter Master delivers his verdict. His word is final and most important. By the way, the approval process can take years. But when it finally happens, the chapter arranges a farewell ceremony. Interestingly, the chapters that provide their warriors to the Deathwatch have their own farewell traditions with a Battle Brother. The Space Wolves, for example, hold a feast that lasts all night. But to be fair, they have a feast for any reason. The Black Templars kneel in silent night prayer. The Storm Guardians gather the entire squad where the Battle Brother served to honor him, and so on. The Deathwatch is not quite the standard Space Marines chapter. Rather, it is not standard at all. This is precisely why it does not adhere to the strict organization of squads and platoons. Essentially, the entirety of the Deathwatch consists of kill teams, which are equipped according to their own discretion. Understandably, all novitiates in the Deathwatch must become accustomed to such a mode of organization, which is especially true for the Ultramarines. However, those who cannot adapt simply do not make it into the Deathwatch. In general, specialists from various chapters continue to hold the same positions within the Deathwatch. That is to say, a chaplain remains a chaplain, tech marines are entrusted with vehicles and military equipment, and both librarians and apothecaries tend to their own affairs. Each Deathwatch fortress is accounted for by 5 platoons, led by a watch captain and lieutenants. They are distinguished by marks of black and red applied to their greaves or armour. Most platoons consist of fewer than 50 Space Marines, divided into 4. 5 kill teams, sometimes even less. The Deathwatch does not fall under the jurisdiction of the Ordo Xenos, unlike the Grey Knights of the Ordo Malleus. However, the chapter has close ties with the Inquisitors, and often it is they who determine the Deathwatch's immediate missions. Sometimes these missions can be quite unorthodox, such as rescuing a Xenos, ignoring the threat of the Tyranids. After such missions, doubts arise within the Deathwatch. Are the Inquisitors using the kill teams for their own selfish purposes? Sometimes this leads to conflicts. There have even been cases when kill teams were dispatched to eliminate a rogue Inquisitor. Such incidents are considered highly classified because the Inquisition does not like to discuss its mistakes. Any reports about these are meticulously encrypted, and all members of the kill team swear an oath of secrecy. The selection process for the Deathwatch, as I have already mentioned, is far from simple, sometimes taking years. But once a veteran Space Marine enters the Deathwatch, his true test begins. He undergoes hypno-indoctrination, during which the Space Marine's consciousness is filled with detailed knowledge about all known sentient and non-sentient races. After this procedure, every warrior of the Deathwatch knows all known vulnerabilities of all known creatures in the Imperium. Besides hypno-indoctrination, he undergoes a prolonged training consisting of theoretical and practical knowledge. For instance, he is required to read a book and then fight a Xenos with bare hands. After such training, the veteran can calmly be sent to a kill team, discarding any previous ranks because, in the Deathwatch, things operate differently. This is, of course, unless he is a librarian or a tech marine. In addition to training, the Space Marine's armour is repainted black, with only the right shoulder retaining the original colours to signify where the veteran came from. Painting over the symbol of the chapter is forbidden. It is a bad omen. On the left shoulder, the veteran bears the insignia of the Death Watch. The armour is also adorned with purity seals, colours, depending on the chapter of his progenitor. Among the Space Wolves, for example, the armour is adorned with runes and talismans of Fenris. The Blood Angels, tears, while the Dark Angels, pendants in the shape of winged swords are already classic. Every kill team of the Death Watch consists of battle brothers from different chapters, each with its own culture and understanding of warfare. This can cause disagreements, and despite the fact that all members of the kill teams share the common ideals to protect humanity at any cost, the commanders still keep an eye on them, because internal strife between the Astartes chapters can spill over into the Death Watch, which can lead to problems within the kill teams. Such is the nature of some Space Marines. They simply do not tolerate each other. For instance, the Dark Angels and Space Wolves have had a long-standing feud, starting from the days of Lyman Russ and Lion L. Johnson during the Horus Heresy, or say the White Scars and the Raven Guard, who, to be fair, have already reconciled. Or Iron Hands and Ultramarines all need to be monitored. As you know, many of the Astartes chapters have minor defects in the gene seed, like the Blood Angels, which is an important consideration in the Death Watch. To become part of the Death Watch, a veteran must pass all the checks by the apothecaries, especially concerning the Wolves and Blood Angels. After all, werewolves and cannibals in a kill team are not an option. If there's even the slightest chance a fighter might lose his mind, he will never be sent to the Death Watch. Nonetheless, there are chapters that are not very friendly with the Inquisition, considering it corrupt and unnecessary. Among them are, for example, the Dark Angels and the Black Templars. Despite this, they also send their veterans to serve in the Death Watch. In addition to veterans from different Astartes chapters, the Death Watch also welcomes the Black Shields. Essentially, these are Space Marines who, for some reason, have renounced their past and joined the Death Watch. Often these are deserters, exiled Space Marines, or simply the Forsaken. Not everyone can erase the emblem of their legion and forget their past. Indeed, there are many ways Black Shields can come to be. It could be a soul Astartes from a chapter who turned to heresy. He erased the symbol of his chapter from his armour. Or a Space Marine who feels he has let down his chapter in some particularly important matter. Such individuals try to seek forgiveness by taking on the most insane and dangerous missions, which will likely end in their death. But for them this is no problem. They seek to earn forgiveness from the God Emperor personally. Those who might have been associated with chaos also end up in the Death Watch, but of course have not mutated in the process, because an outright devotee of chaos would not be taken into the Death Watch. The Death Watch is the only chapter that accepts renegades. They have ancient traditions according to which a Space Marine, having erased the symbol of his chapter, can come to the commander of the Death Watch, and they will not ask about his past. It is crucial that he meets all the requirements. Nevertheless, everyone who comes tells their story to the commander, and it remains a secret. The commander might expose them, but such cases are very rare. Only if the Space Marine was an unpleasant type or immediately started shouting for Magnus. In most cases, the commander of the Death Watch will give him a chance to repent. Joining the Death Watch as a Black Shield is possible only once. Leaving is impossible. Black Shields always receive the most difficult and sometimes humiliating missions, and very rarely do they advance in rank within the Death Watch, though sometimes it does indeed happen. A Black Shield might even become a chaplain, a captain, and extremely rarely a commander of the Death Watch. This is rare, Only Black Shields remain in the Death Watch forever. Other Space Marines may come and go after several years and then return. It's something akin to a strict summer camp for Space Marines. The Death Watch has many fortresses and stations across the galaxy. These fortresses remain beyond the official records of the Imperium. Only the High Lords of Terror and the Inquisition know of them, and even they do not know about all of them. Each fortress is governed by a Death Watch commander. He decides where to send kill teams and which planets should be attacked. The largest watch fortress in the Imperium is Thalassa Prime. It is practically a planet fortress, gifted to the Death Watch by the Ultramarines chapter. It is located on the eastern fringe of the Ultima Segmentum in Ultramar. Here resides the massive Ordo Xenos facility and the headquarters of the Death Watch chapter. Thalassa Prime houses the main training center and the place where Space Marines from other chapters are trained and equipped. It was here that Death Watch Master Mordalai inducted the new Primaris into the ranks of the chapter. However, after the opening of the Great Rift, Cicatrix Maledictum, much has changed, and now the duties of Thalassa Prime are shared between the fortresses Fort Excalibris and Prefex Venatoris. Both are located in the Imperium Nihilus and are constantly under attack by Drukhari, deal with migrations of the Hrud and train new Death Watch fighters. Each Death Watch fortress is unique, but all share a similar structure. They usually house 5 watch companies, each led by a Death Watch captain. These companies are non-standard and differ from the companies of other chapters. One might comprise only Terminator armor troops, another bikers, and a third infantry. Each company undertakes its unique missions, and no two teams are alike. The most active work of the Death Watch occurs in the Jericho Reach. Their presence in the region is the result of an ancient resolution, the goals of which are unknown and kept in strict secrecy. In the Jericho Reach, the Death Watch appeared long before the Aculus Crusade, and established many watch stations distributed across various worlds and moons. Each station is unique, but all serve as bases for various operations. Rarely does anyone stay on these stations for long. They more closely resemble mobile bases that can lie dormant for decades. The largest fortress of the Death Watch in the Jericho Reach is Eriok. It is a true bastion built upon an artifact as ancient as Terra itself. It is located in a dead zone consisting of several dying stars. No more than 200 members of the Death Watch can be present in Eriok at any time, since the rest are constantly on missions. The Guardians of the Chamber of Vigilance are the only ones who never leave Eriok, the place where the meetings of the Death Watch's War Council are held. Here, all critical decisions concerning the Jericho Reach are made. Eriok also houses the Inquisitorial Conclave in the central spire of the fortress. The apartments of this conclave always house an Inquisitor who is part of the Chamber of Vigilance. Normally there aren't many guests here, but now it is the most populated area of the entire fortress, as it is visited by numerous Inquisitors. Indeed, these are tumultuous times. The fortress Eriok is a star fortress reminiscent of the Ramillies-class starfort. Experts from the Imperium's fleet claim that such a fortress is capable of warp jumps. It was brought to the Jericho Reach some time ago, as there were not enough materials for its construction in the region. The fortress is equipped with numerous guns, ready for any threat, and is located in the dead zone of the namesake system, where its stars are dying. Inside the fortress there is a network of dusty corridors and labyrinths, leading to sealed doors made of adamantium alloy, as well as to the residences of Space Marines, training grounds, armories, and briefing rooms. There are many places where Space Marines refine their skills and strengthen their spirit. In the maze of corridors there are huge training fields and halls where one can master shooting and melee combat with Tyranids. The fortress also houses a shrine where warriors meditate, maintaining faith in the Emperor of mankind and humanity itself. In the depths of the fortress, distinctive insignias of more than 100 Space Marine chapters can be seen, including those that no longer exist. The star system Arioch instills fear in many pilots, as it orbits a slowly dying white dwarf star surrounded by 7 planets with perfectly circular orbits. Each planet is a lifeless mountain formation, slightly larger than Terra, devoid of life, craters or debris. All appear untouchable. The fortress Arioch orbits the 6th planet. To enter this system, one must obtain precise coordinates from the Death Watch. Otherwise, one risks becoming stuck in the warp or attacked upon approach. In the depths of the fortress Arioch, a mysterious artifact is stored, as is the case with each chapter in the Warhammer. Perhaps it is the reason for the Death Watch's presence in the Jericho Reach. At the heart of Arioch lie the Omega Vault, where a terrible truth about the future is kept. This place has always remained sealed, and only the Death Watch ensures that no one attempts to penetrate it. The Omega Vault is a complex system of ancient mechanisms, catacombs and chambers located at the heart of the fortress Arioch. Its sole entrance is a door 40 meters in height, secured with powerful armored plates, void shields and adamantium. Carved on the door are symbols of the Death Watch and Terran runes, encircling the image of the Emperor defeating the serpentine dragon. The inscription above the door reads, "Truth is the last fortress." Every new brother joining the Death Watch takes an oath of vigilance under these words. It's clear that an ordinary person cannot open the doors of this sanctuary. They can only be unlocked by command of the ancient mechanisms upon which everything here relies. The vault contains answers to many events occurring in the Jericho Reach. The central repository of Fortress Arioch is directly connected to something within the Omega Vault. It periodically reacts to reports from various watch stations scattered throughout the Jericho Reach, unlocking previously sealed doors. This could happen in response to time or to received information, since not all events in the Jericho Reach are significant to it. For instance, when the Tyranids attacked the Orpheus salient, the Vault did not react. However, Omega does respond to certain invasions by the Tyranids, Orks and other Xenos. Neither the Inquisition nor the Death Watch understands why this happens. There was only one instance when an artifact stored in one of the chambers was retrieved, though the Death Watch had very little time. The Vault quickly notified that it would soon close, warning that those who remained would meet death. Throughout the history of Fortress Arioch, many different artifacts, weapons, viruses, various maps and astonishing life forms have been discovered in the Omega Vault. Once, an ancient astropath who was in a stasis field was found there. When awakened, he sent a single short message and then crumbled to dust, as he was very ancient, but he had fulfilled his mission. What and where he sent it remains unknown. Recently, the complex mechanisms of the Omega Vault opened on their own, possibly influenced by the incursions of Chaos or the Tyranids. Some locks remained closed. Along with this, secret journals of the Death Watch, stored in electronic format in ancient machines, were found. After this, it became clear that the Death Watch possesses ancient weapons and a wealth of information that could help the Imperium survive. Consequently, numerous kill teams were sent to various corners of the Jericho Reach, and some of them have not returned. No one knows what will happen when all the locks of the Omega Vault fully open. Perhaps the Imperium will gain the most powerful weapon in the fight against the Xenos, or it will find its doom. In the heart of the Omega Vault lies another dungeon, rumoured to contain the main secret of the Dead Watch, hidden behind rows of doors that have been slowly opening over centuries. Behind these doors, the Brethren of the Chamber of Vigilance keep a vigilant watch, believing that contained therein is a weapon that could assist the Death Watch in the Jericho Reach. Thus, the Omega Vault is guarded not only by doors and a shield, as you may think. Stored within the dungeon is an ancient pathogen capable of instantly killing any Xenos, yet harmless to humans. Who created it remains unknown and likely will forever remain so. But one thing is certain, the Omega Vaults were constructed by humans. Why they needed a Xenos-specific pathogen that does not harm humans remains a mystery. In the last of the Death Watch's vaults, only a few seals remain unbroken, and the time when the doors will open is drawing near. It makes one wonder what they are waiting for. Death Watch has numerous fortresses, not only in Eriok but also in other locations. For example, Damaroth, a fortress situated in the Ultima segmentum, takes the form of a huge artificial ring built around the local luminous moon. Who built it remains unknown, but the Death Watch has claimed it for themselves. Death Watch often captures Xenos territories. Zarabek Fortress once belonged to the ancient alien race of the Mulari, but the Death Watch utterly destroyed them, killing their leaders and obliterating their sanctum of knowledge. Thus the Mulari were completely exterminated, and their citadel of Zarabek became a new fortress. In the Damocles Gulf, a favourite habitat of the Tau, there lies a Death Watch fortress known as the Eye of Damocles, from which Death Watch observes the Tau and directs their kill teams for attacks. In the Watch Fortress Eye of Octos, located in the Octarius sector during the era Indomitus, efforts were focused on dealing with fragments of the Leviathan hive that had invaded the neighbouring subsector of Pancalis. Fort Ajax kept watch over the Eldar, and when Bieltan conducted punitive raids in the subsector of Garavissima, Fort Ajax undertook the burning of everything on the world of the Exodites. Bieltan responded to the distress signal, dispatching a squadron of Eldar that fell into a trap. There were failures, for example, with Fort Velocia, which was captured by the undying legions of the Necron overlord Janatar. The watch fortress Holtmote was supposed to observe the Tiamat system, which hosted an offshoot of the famous Hive fleet. Sending a kill team to the planet Zeophoria, they were surprised when everyone aboard the Corvus Black Star was destroyed. As the assassination team approached the planet, they discovered a huge bioconstruct that emitted psychic scream. His scream was heard by the Tyranids, who broke onto the ship and killed the Space Marines. Sergeant Junheim managed to send a distress signal and report on what he saw. He witnessed an organic object the size of a continent, a colossal creature of chitin and soft flesh resembling a brain. It hummed with colossal psychic force and cast a powerful shadow in the warp. Later, the Inquisitors of the Ordo Xenos suggested that the Tyranids were building a massive beacon to signal the path into the galaxy for the tendrils of the Great Devourer. There are many Sentinel strongholds, for the number of Xenos does not dwindle. The Death Watch also possesses watch stations, which the Death Watch utilizes in the Jericho Reach, scattered across worlds and moons, as well as in the vacuum of the Reach itself. Each watch station serves the chapter as a base for operations and for observing the Jericho Reach. They gather information about the terrain and events in their vicinity. The powerful sensors of the stations are directed into deep space. The Brothers of the Death Watch collect information from these stations and transmit it to the archives of the Fortress Eriok, which is connected to the Omega Vault. For traversing the Jericho Reach, they use vessels known as black ships, which can fly unnoticed between the stars. These stations also hold weaponry and ammunition, should any kill team require resupply. The stations are also equipped with a self-destruct mechanism, because most of the time they are unmanned, and they could be captured by traitors or Xenos. Here is a brief list of Eriok watch stations. Station Arcus resembles a geared steel spinneret, rotating in the outer limits of the Arcus system, and can accommodate a mere 12 battle brothers. Herein is based a Deathwatch astropath, currently a man named Var. Since the opening of the Cicatrix Maledictum, his work has become significantly more challenging, and at times there has been no word from him. The Arcus system houses many planetary bodies, 2 of which may contain signs of life. What business Deathwatch has in the Arcus system is unclear, but mysterious energy phenomena constantly occur there. Even a dead Ork ship long since cleared by the Deathwatch. It hangs close to the 3rd moon of Arcus II. Watch Station Midail is located on a dead world, covered in grey metallic dust, and is near the chaos-held Charon worlds. Since there has been no contact for 30 years, it is said that a single Deathwatch battle brother has been waiting there for someone to arrive for 30 years. He guards what lies within the station, but there are no servitors left, and the station itself has lost viability, plus it is periodically attempted to be taken. Yet the Deathwatch battle brother is so formidable that nobody has yet taken Station Midail, though the Hadex anomaly is nearby. In the Jericho Reach there are also non-standard stations, for example, Phaedus, an archaeotech ship like no other in Imperial records. It's unclear what the Mercantius knows about Phaedus. The ship is highly automated and might contain traces of artificial intelligence. It can designate its own destination and travel in the warp without a navigator, though only for short distances. It resembles a small asteroid. Another famous Deathwatch station in the Jericho Reach is Station Eartha, located on a semi-arid world in the Canis Salient. The Ta'au Empire is confident the planet contains rich fuel resources and minerals and decided to colonize it. The Ta'au were taken aback when they stumbled upon heavily armored structures hidden within the crevices of the Beric Mountains. A mere 20 Astartes from the station on Huerta managed to so severely undermine the Ta'au efforts with their raids that they made the conquest of the planet impossible, at least for the time being. The Ta'au, you see, are not ones to sit idly by either. Indeed, the Deathwatch closely studies the Hadex anomaly, and for this purpose constructed the CX 3119 station. Initially, it was created as a mobile station so that it could always be on the edge of the warp storm. As soon as there were changes in the warp, the station immediately moved further away. However, at some point the system failed, and the Hadex anomaly doubled in size, swallowing up the Deathwatch station. There were, of course, no people there, but important equipment was nevertheless lost, or so the Imperium believed, until, years later, the station reappeared, far from where it had vanished. Now, the Deathwatch is in disagreement with the Inquisition about whether to explore the station for what the censors recorded. But while the issue is being discussed, the station has been marked and is being circled from a distance in space. It's dangerous because that's it. Interestingly, right at the center of the Hadex anomaly, there's also the watch station Belarius. It is carved into a massive asteroid, and for a long time was considered lost, because nothing survives in the Hadex anomaly. It was built millennia ago to observe Xenos activity in the Jericho Reach. A post on Belarius was the most coveted among all Deathwatch. Here, a battle brother could seclude himself for his reflections, but at the same time be in reach of the sector's capital and many warp routes to quickly react to various events. But when the Hadex anomaly opened, it engulfed the station, and most battle brothers mutated or were destroyed by the force of warp energy. Those who survived the anomaly's opening later perished from hordes of demons and warp entities that slowly and painfully killed them. Of course, all the warriors fought to the end, and when the remaining commander realized that his body was mutating before his eyes, he blew up the corridor along with himself. The last astropathic message was received by the Midail station 70 years after the anomaly opened, and there was nothing good in it. Since the Deathwatch officially belongs to the Ordo Xenos, All its Astartes are engaged in the search for, study of, and, if necessary, the destruction of intelligent Xenos species, as well as their artifacts, weapons, and various devices. Despite the fact that the Adeptus Mechanicus seemingly invents nothing new, they are keen to unravel alien technologies. And so everything discovered by the Death Watch is sent to the cult on Mars for study. As you probably understand, any Ordo's army is packed with the latest technology. From the Death Watch's perspective, this is an absolute truth. Some weapons and gadgets possessed by the Death Watch border on techno-heresy and the rest of the Imperium. But for the Death Watch, this is the norm. Indeed, following every operation, the Adeptus Mechanicus meticulously ensures that none of their secret and forbidden developments have gone missing. The most valuable and dangerous equipment is fitted with self-destruct mechanisms to prevent enemies from utilizing them. The majority of armors and weapons are revered within the chapter as relics and are genuinely very powerful. Notably, the weapons of the Death Watch are designed, tuned, and consecrated in such a way to become a bane to specific Xenos. Each Death Watch Marine employs various ammunition types in their bolter. These might include rounds filled with promethium, plasma, acid, or viruses to inflict greater damage on specific targets. Every bolt used by the Death Watch is a true masterpiece, handcrafted by the chapter's gunsmiths and thrice consecrated with the holy water. The types of bolts employed by the Death Watch naturally have their names. For instance, the Dragonfire bolt contains a potent flammable overheated gas that explodes upon contact with an enemy, releasing a cloud of scorching chemical fire. The target swiftly ignites and dies. The Kraken bolt uses an adamantium core as its heart, enhancing the bolt's range and penetrating power. It is also well suited against armoured targets. The Hellfire round houses a reservoir filled with biodegrading agents and various toxins, highly effective against Tyranids, literally devouring them from within. The bolt named Vengeance round is designed to kill Astartes heretics, and is supremely effective against armoured targets, thanks to the technology of an unstable magnetic core. The Hellspear's bolt excellently penetrates psychic defences, as sometimes the Xenos erect significant psychic barriers. The Death Watch also has bolts that temporarily interrupt the reanimation of Necrons, as they contain a cyclic temporal core. Moreover, the Death Watch possesses thermal-penetrating rounds and inertial thermonuclear rounds, which leave craters in their wake. Not to be overlooked is the Metal Storm frag shells, which explodes a few seconds before impact, showering the target with razor-sharp fragments. There are also Tempest bolts, which are particularly effective at disrupting the internals of various machines and, of course, incapacitating them. The same applies to spacecraft. Their cannons too fire various types of ammunition. Why is this necessary? Well, the kill team never knows who it might encounter next, thus it is forced to have universal weapons at its disposal. The Death Watch utilizes bolters of the artifacts and Hesh patterns, which are fitted with special adapters for different types of magazines. All Death Watch kill team Marines can switch the type of ammunition in their bolter with a click. The shotguns of the Death Watch have a larger caliber than those of other chapters, and also contain their own set of ammunition. Among them is a high-power explosive charge affectionately named Crypt Clearer rounds, designed, of course, against the Necrons. They also contain ammunition that turns a shotgun into a flamethrower, known as Serpent's Breath. Understandably, this is not a full-fledged flamethrower, but it is still quite gratifying. They also have a full-fledged version known as the Infernus Heavy Bolter, a combo weapon with an integrated heavy flamethrower. Additionally, the Death Watch utilizes frag cannons. Its variations are typically mounted on dreadnoughts, but the Death Watch has a handheld version. In close combat, the members of the Death Watch utilize phase blades, which, of course, emerged due to the sophisticated technology of the Necrons, which the priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus refined for the Death Watch. Phase blades can disappear from reality, passing through armor, and then reappear abruptly. Think that's all? By no means. For every type of Xenos, there are unique weapons, for instance, the balefire gun, a flamethrower operating on highly purified promethium, excellent for burning especially powerful Xenos, and those who regenerate quickly. Of course, the flamethrower works best in a melee with Orks. The Deathwatch arsenal includes a wealth of missile launchers like the Cyclone or Armorbane missile launcher, plasma guns, which are issued only to the most elite veterans of the Deathwatch, graviton guns, sniper rifles, and of course a multitude of bolters and flamethrowers. Rest assured, the array of lethal instruments at the Deathwatch's disposal is perfectly operational. Another unique feature of the Deathwatch is the atmospheric assault ship known as the Corvus Blackstar. Some even call it the Corvus. The Blackstar is always used in airborne operations against ground targets. This ship combines the functions of a drop pod and a powerful gunship, delivering troops to the location and striking from the air. A squadron of Blackstars can swiftly create a foothold on the ground, be it against Orks or Tyranids, which the Deathwatch then assaults. The Corvuses possess high protection and can withstand direct hits from anti-aircraft guns, and for missiles they have decoys known as infernum. On remote planets, Corvus's Blackstar are perceived as angelic saviours by the locals. Some equipment of the Deathwatch is considered so valuable that it must not fall into enemy hands. If something precious from the Deathwatch is lost in battle, the commander can organise a rescue mission. If the equipment is truly valuable and cannot be recovered, it is immediately destroyed using a self-destruct device. The importance of such operations is undeniable. There have been instances when everything was at stake. For example, once due to the loss of a relic of Dark Age of technology by the Deathwatch, a moon fell onto a planet, destroying all life. It was found by a Xenos who accidentally activated it. This is a typical situation. Another feature of the Deathwatch is their kill ships. These are drone ships used to carry out exterminatus on worlds lost to the Imperium. Every kill ship is equipped with cloaking devices utilizing Dark Age of technology. Their purpose is stealthy infiltration into systems captured by Xenos and to discreetly carry out exterminatus. Rumours suggest there are so many of them that, if they so desired, they could obliterate all worlds in the Jericho Reach. Naturally, each assassin group differs in tactics and bears its own name. For instance, Aquila Kill Teams serves as a versatile squad capable of undertaking any task. Should the Deathwatch encounter an unknown enemy, Aquila Kill Teams is deployed first and foremost. Rather than specializing in the elimination of individual Xenos warriors or strategic targets, the Aquila group represents versatile squads that can quickly adapt to new challenges on the battlefield. All Battle Brothers of Aquila are armed with a broad arsenal of weapons, allowing them to confront any adversary. Typically, the Aquilas are sent on reconnaissance missions into dangerous territories. Dominatus Kill Teams is tasked with the destruction of elite warriors from various Xenos species, faced in great numbers. Deadly Drukhari incubi, immortal Necrons, Ork knobs, and so forth. Dominatus analyzes each elite enemy and strives to exploit their weaknesses. In battle, these teams use an array of weapons aimed at eliminating specific elite Xenos foes. Führer Kill Teams specializes in eradicating large concentrations of Xenos, such as Orks or Tyranids. When the battlefield accumulates a multitude of Xenos, Führer Kill Teams is activated. Their Space Marines usually operate with long-range firearms that provide massed fire, and employ mortars and artillery firing shells containing bioacid and shrapnel. As the Xenos numbers dwindle, battle brothers in Terminator armor take their place, armed with lightning claws and chainswords. The Malleus team specializes in destroying tanks and large monsters. They fear not the colossal Xenos looming over them in battle. They are well acquainted with the vulnerabilities of all these threats, and use their portable heavy weapons, the most powerful, to strike at them. In combat, they don Terminator armor and shields for protection, while the Malleus strike devastating blows with thunderhammers and other power weapons. Purgatus kill teams specializes in eliminating Xenos commanders, be it Ork warbosses, homunculi, autarchs, or immense Tyranid carnifexes. The Purgatus understand a simple rule: cut off the head and the body falls, and always act according to this doctrine. Each warrior of the Purgatus kill team is armed sufficiently to deal with an Ork warboss or any other adversary. They utilize a combination of close and long-range combat to get past bodyguards and reach the commander himself. The Venator kill teams specializes in precision strikes against swift Xenos, such as the Eldar. They are masters in the use of their power armor and have nothing to fear, even from the swiftest of foes. The Bikers and Space Marines of the Venators enhance their speed and maneuverability, crashing into the enemy crowd to sow confusion, while the rest of the warriors deliver the main strike. The veterans of the Venators also use Terminator armor, but are much more agile in it than their standard brethren. The Venator kill teams is activated when conventional forces cannot cope with the enemy due to its speed and maneuverability. There are other kill teams such as Proteus, with veterans from the First Company, and Fortis, consisting of Primaris. These kill teams emerged during the era Indomitus, under the influence of Rabuti Gilliman, who seeks to restore the glory of the Imperium. The Fortis kill team was created in the fortress of Thalassa Prime as an improved version of the Aquila kill team, and these teams have been successfully fulfilling their tasks ever since. There are also Spectrus kill teams operating covertly, and Primaris Indomita in Mark X Gravis power armor. Of course, the Death Watch not only fights against Xenos, but also against those who have been exposed to Xenos taint. There are a plethora of scenarios in this regard. For example, the Ta'au are up to something, or gin stealers infiltrate the ranks of the Imperial Guard. There might be slavers controlling mines, servants of chaos, Eldar, anyone. In the Imperium, it seems, many dream of fraternizing with Xenos. Most often, colonists or soldiers of the Imperial Guard come under threat. But even Space Marines can find themselves at risk. This happened with one of the Subjugators chapter units. During the campaign in the Technetium Belt, the Space Marines were infected with a xenovirus known as the Cell Kin. This virus alters DNA and body, turning it into an alien host. The Space Marines proved vulnerable to the virus. Some of them were saved, but 20 brethren from the Third Company turned into Cellkins and disappeared, continuing to pose a threat to the galaxy. There have been many heroes of the Death Watch throughout history, but one could talk about them all day. Today I will highlight the most famous in their field of activity. Let's start with the main one, Asger Warfist, who was a wolf lord during the time of the Beast's invasion into the Imperium. He successfully fought the Orks alongside other space wolves and led the Great Company in defending the industrial moon of Fabric. Then the Great Wolf sent him to Terra to attack Ulanor, the Beast's stronghold, as part of a kill team. Asger became one of the first members of the Death Watch and helped destroy the Beast's battle moon over Terra. Shortly before the second invasion of Ulanor, the Lord Commander of the Imperial Fists, Courland, appointed Asger as the first chapter master of the Death Watch. Another prominent commander of the Death Watch was Valesnus. Right after the creation of the Great Rift, he commanded the Death Watch in the Fort Starshield. It was then that they were attacked by Orks. The kill teams easily routed the enemy but discovered that it had been too easy. The crews of the Orc ships suddenly succumbed to panic. Velesnus decided that there was sense in it and ordered a retreat. He was right, as then the Orc Wa appeared, and Fort Starshield could not withstand their attack. The Wa was led by Gajukul Mag Uruk Thraka. Velesnus gathered his forces to kill the war boss, and they managed to destroy several Orc ships. However, the war boss's forces were too numerous. Fort Starshield and all the kill teams were destroyed. Later, the bodies of Velesnus and his lieutenants were found. Their armour was torn, and their bodies were marked with the personal seal of Gajukul Mag Uruk Thraka. Today, the Death Watch is led by Mordalai. He manages the fortress of Talassa Prime and is involved in incorporating new Primaris into the Death Watch. He is supported as an adherent of the Malleus tactic, aimed at fighting Xenos in Ultramar. Of course, he is personally respected by Marneus Calgar. Speaking of the renowned brother captains of the Death Watch, one cannot overlook Uriel Ventris, known for his steadfast character. Yes, you are correct. He hails from the Ultramarines. But before becoming a captain, Ventris was assigned to the Death Watch. His fate then led him to other worlds, but he distinguished himself in battles against the Tyranids. There are many apothecaries in the Death Watch, but the most outstanding is considered to be Gregor Than. He is known for his ability to synthesize various viruses effective against Xenos. Then almost single-handedly the purging of Castilium from a Xenos race known as the Thazim, who were immune to conventional weapons. His toxins dealt with them. His abilities were noticed, and he was immediately recommended to the Death Watch. In the year 815 of the 41st millennium, he joined the fortress of Watch Fortress Erioch and began his service there. Interestingly, Gregor Than was not included in a kill team. Instead, he came under the command of Mordigale, who was involved in developing toxins and viruses against the Tyranids. Since then, Than has been working with various kill teams and collecting Tyranid genomaterial, testing toxins on them in field conditions. So far, he has not found an effective virus against the Tyranids, as they adapt too quickly. But he has a plan. Tyranids located further from the territories of the Imperium are fresher, and their genetic base is best suited for his developments. He is always on the move and continuously testing various viruses. As for the librarians of the Death Watch, there are many, including a Death Spectres librarian named Leandro Carras. He long dreamed of joining the Death Watch to glorify his chapter, and at one point he was even entrusted with leading a kill team for 6 years. He has a curious side effect from using psychic powers. When he uses them, a slit appears on his forehead, which functions as a third eye. When he stops using psychic powers, the slit disappears. Owing to this ability, he can read thoughts and create astral projections. Gensus Notorian, who also serves in the Death Watch, displayed his psychic abilities during the murder of his parents by the Green-Skinned. When he witnessed their demise, he tore dozens of Xenos apart with his bare hands in a tempest of psychic violence. This continues to this day, and now his victims are not only Orks, but any Xenos that stand in his way. The Blood Ravens raised the boy and afterwards sent him to the Death Watch. Since then, all his skills serve the Imperium and the Ordo Xenos. Another librarian, Ashok, who was formerly a Blood Angel, is distinguished by being afflicted with the Black Rage. Once on the planet Hegelian 9, his squad fell into a rage and began to slay each other. Ashok killed 3 of his comrades before he could regain control of himself. For the next 3 years, he became strapped to the tablet of Lestralio in his chapter's fortress monastery, where he faced the nightmares caused by the rage. After he emerged from this state, Ashok was presented with the Shroud of Lamartz as a symbol of his mastery over the Black Rage. After Ashok joined the Death Watch and serves under the command of Quirion Octavius. He has performed several harsh feats, for example, the battle on the planet Herodian 4, where he clashed with 3 zoanthropes at once and survived. Ortan Cassius, the eldest of the Ultramarines, nearly 400 years old. Only those entombed in dreadnoughts outdo him. Cassius became a chaplain in his youth, which is quite early overall. However, his battle brothers were inspired by his incredible zeal and hatred for the enemies of humanity, although many considered him too aggressive. Ortan joined the Death Watch shortly before the Tyrannic Wars and participated in one of the largest confrontations with the gin-stealers on Gusar Quintus, where he formed his own kill team. He also took part in the battle for Macragge alongside Marneus Calgar. When the Hive Fleet behemoth attacked Ultramar, his body was so mangled in the battle that it's unclear how he survived at all. But then, of course, everything was replaced with bionic components. But even they couldn't fully repair his body. Since then, he has become a professional in battles against Tyranids and is always ready to come to the aid of the Ultramarines and the Death Watch. There is also a Death Watch Forge Master named Zeril, Tech Marine, who was invited to the Death Watch after discovering a deposit of Elder Spirit Stone. He is fascinated by unravelling the mysteries of Xenos artifacts. Interestingly, one of the Inquisitors, Romeus, recommended him to the Death Watch. He is especially fond of Necron artifacts because they remind him of the Iron Hands. He constantly explores worlds in search of the tombs of the beings made of living metal. In one of his raids, he discovered a strange silver box of cubic shape, absolutely seamless. Taking him to the fortress Erioch, he opened the crate and found a multitude of different pieces of knowledge about the Necrons, which he immediately began to send in encrypted form to his chapter. And this was despite the leaders of the Iron Hands pleading with him not to be expelled from the Death Watch, claiming he was useful to the Imperium in this form. The Death Watch has dreadnoughts, but not just any dreadnoughts. They have black shields. One of them is called Nihilus, and he serves in the garrison of the fortress of Thalassa Prime. The true name of Nihilus was known only to a long-deceased Tech Marine who had brought him into the Death Watch. He changed his name to Nihilus to remain anonymous. Although the Death Watch does not favour such mysteries, Nihilus is respected by all because he is unstoppable in battle. Currently he is part of a team under the command of Captain Artemis. And by the way, it's worth mentioning a few words about him too. He was originally a battle brother of the Mortifactors chapter, who currently serves as the watch captain of Thalassa Prime. He dealt with many affairs in his life. For instance, he fought against the soldiers of the Canib race, created by ancients millions of years ago. Artemis personally defeated their leader, putting an end to their invasion of imperial space. Do you know what he is most famous for? For preventing the resurrection ritual of Aenead, conducted by Eldrad Ulthran. This, of course, saved countless lives, including elders, although Eldrad Ulthran urgently pleaded with him not to intervene. Yes, he only wanted to destroy Slaanesh, but we know better. But to the Death Watch, this matter was of no consequence, for Slaanesh is Slaanesh. As a result, Artemis became one of the most successful members of the Death Watch and led the watch company Tertius at the fortress of Thalassa Prime. There is another formidable dreadnought in the Death Watch named Zobzak, a former warrior of the Imperial Fists chapter. He loves to compare every event to the past, asserting that the space marines of his time were 100 times better than the contemporary ones. Sometimes Zobzak gets so carried away that he might even strike someone with his mighty fist. Perhaps he would not have been accepted into the Watches if not for his combat prowess. He really has lived through a lot in his life. Of course, the Death Watch has many more remarkable characters. After all, this chapter is elite. And what threats await the Death Watch in its campaigns? Oh, there are plenty. For instance, the Watchmen periodically conduct raids into the Comorra. At one point in the 41st millennium, Free traders told the Death Watch that a Space Marine captain was being held captive in Comora. He was captured, and now he performs in arenas for the entertainment of the Drukhari. After consulting with the first company of the Salamanders, which had previously conducted successful operations in Comora, Kill Team Aldrich found a way inside and freed the captain, using their Corvus Blackstar ship, which they had stolen from a damaged Corsair vessel. Breaking through the arena, they freed the captain and escaped from Comora. During this sortie, all members of the kill team perished except for Ulrich, but they managed to escape on a stolen Corsair ship. Once the Death Watch uncovered the Catan Vault of Azagorod, also known as the Nightbringer. This embodiment of death, a god who revels in the torment of his victims and capable of extinguishing stars with his might. Of course, it was not the Catan itself, but a shard of it, found in the Golga system thanks to the psychic traces of its victims. The Death Watch sent a kill team to destroy it and discovered that the system was teeming with various monsters, both biological and mechanical. For several months, Death Watch squads from 3 watch fortresses waged war against these creatures until Azgorod's sanctuary was destroyed by continuous bombardment from laser cannons and vehicles. The Death Watch also participated in the notorious suicidal operation of Inquisitor Cryptman. In the year 997 of the 41st millennium, when the madman ordered the destruction of all the worlds of the Imperium in the path of the Tyranid Leviathan fleet, so that they would have nothing to consume and thus would retreat. For this folly he was suspended from the Inquisition, and even plans were made for his execution, but it was not carried out because he seemed apparently to be useful. The Inquisitor devised a cunning plan. He asked the Death Watch to capture Djinn Stealer's broods from a spaceship and send them to the captured empire of Octarius so that the Tyranids and Orks would fight each other and themselves. The goal was to give the Imperium time to recover and act further, although the plan was initially doomed considering that Orks represent a valuable source of biomass for the development of Tyranids, and after such clashes the bugs only got stronger. The Death Watch recruits masters of deception. For example, in the 32nd millennium, Eldar Corsairs learned about an ancient artifact called the Doomsday Sphere, stored in the Omega Fortress. This artifact was carefully protected and kept in the fortress's most secure vault. When the Corsairs attacked Omega, they found themselves in an ambush organized by Death Watch Venator kill teams. Hundreds of Corsairs died before they could reach the storage area of the artifact, which, in reality, did not exist. This was because the Black Shields of the Death Watch had spread rumours among free traders to lure the Xenos into a trap. Inquisitors often cause problems for the Death Watch. For instance, at the end of the 41st millennium, an Ordo Xenos Inquisitor named Gao constructed a watch fortress at Fort Velocia, named the Necrontyr Datacane. Learning of this, the Necron overlord Xanatar the Vengeful attacked the fortress with an army of Necrons, leading to the destruction of the kill team and the capture of Inquisitors. Following the rebirth of Robut Gilliman and the opening of the Great Rift, Robut decided to restore his father's shattered realm. Fortunately, he had the forces in the form of Dormant Primaris, whom he dispatched to all the chapters of the Space Marines, along with the new, powerful technologies of Belisarius Call. Of course, the Death Watch was also reinforced, and is now readier than ever to repel Xenos attacks. However, not everyone in the Death Watch is fond of the Primaris. This is evident in many instances. For example, Watch Captain Holjar Ironfang, who received reinforcements in the form of a Primaris kill team, sent them on the deadliest missions during an engagement with Orks because he did not trust them and even despised them. He reserved the best missions for his veteran kill teams and purgators. His teams were trapped. Most of their fighters were butchered by Orks while others were taken prisoner. Imagine his surprise when the Primaris and Kill Team Theranos came to his aid. After that, he spent 10 years voluntarily atoning for his mistakes, becoming a rank-and-file battle brother in Kill Team Theranos of the Primaris. Since the opening of the Cicatrix Maledictum, things have only gotten worse. The number of migrations and Hrud attacks, for instance, increased. Recently, the Hrud attacked the shrine world of Damol, coveting its local stasis tombs. They arrived and immediately began to sow chaos on the planet. Regiments of the Mordian Iron Guard were deployed to combat them, but quickly aged and died from the Hrud's infamous entropic field. The same happened to a strike force of the Sons of Medusa, by the way. At some point, the Death Watch decided to engage. 2 full companies and 8 dreadnoughts launched an assault on the Hrud labyrinths, enduring their temporal aura as best as possible, to eventually eliminate the Hrud leaders and destroy everything. When the battle concluded, 8 dreadnoughts had transformed into rusty hulks. The biological remains within them quieted, turning to dust. Indeed, the Hruds have a way of stealing time from the ancients. When radical Ordo Xenos Inquisitor Balfus Bile, employing some severe Xenos technologies, managed to penetrate through the warp storms of the Dark Imperium aboard the ship Castasi, it was imperative to deliver the Death Watch kill team to the Tau. Truthfully, during the ensuing battle, the Tau boarded the Castasi, and the Death Watch was forced to destroy it to prevent the technology from falling into Tau hands. The Inquisitor, by the way, subsequently faced repercussions as well. Generally speaking, the Death Watch was indispensable, not only in the Octarius and Kalnath war zones, where they resolutely carried out their missions against Orks, Tyranids, and other Xenos, who spend their lives attempting to stab the weakened Imperium in the ribs. The Death Watch faces many problems, but overall they are formidable forces of the Imperium that must be reckoned with, primarily by the Xenos, of course, because, if necessary, the Death Watch will quickly demonstrate what they are capable of.